All right.
Let's see if the clicker works. The clicker works. We're in business.
Sometimes it picks and chooses the days it wants to work.
All right. Today is a good day. Okay, we will kick it off with a prayer and then we will start the law. Our Father in heaven, we come before you in prayer this morning, very thankful for the opportunity to gather together and to study your word. We ask that you please join us and be with us this morning as we study the law and the prophets. We ask that you please bless us with open hearts and open minds that we might learn something, and that your words will be spoken this morning and not my own. We pray that you be with those who are not with us. Please be with them on their journeys and keep them safe. We look forward to seeing them again soon. For it is in your Son's name that we pray. Amen. Okie dokie. So, we talked briefly, probably a couple of months ago, and I did a very 40,000 foot view of the Bible. Talked about the division of the Old Testament. There's the Torah, there's the prophets, and there's the writings. The Torah is what we're going to focus on this morning. That's the first 5 books of the Bible. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Sometimes called the books of Moses, sometimes called the Pentateuch. Basically, these are, when we think of the law, these are the books that we think of. I'd say the big notes, if you were to cliff note, each of these books. Genesis, of course, is about the creation. And it's not just about creation as such, but it's also about the creation of the covenant that God makes with humanity. And specifically, that covenant comes through Abraham. So basically, we see in Genesis the intention of God. His intent is to marry himself to humanity. And we see the marriage is used more frequently, perhaps maybe not more frequently, but frequently we see marriage as the relationship that God has with humanity. It's less a parent-child relationship and more a marriage. And the idea is that there's a push-pull struggle. And we see that in Moses. Moses embodies that. And we're going to read a couple of passages that still just strike me in the way that Moses has a conversation with God. And in the same way that you would have a conversation with your partner. Your partner's upset about something. You meet them there and talk through it with them. And that's exactly what Moses and God do, often in the sight of the children of Israel. So Exodus is about that. It's the action of God. So we see Genesis kind of tease up the covenant. And hundreds of years pass between the end of Genesis and the beginning of Exodus. And we see in Exodus is the action of God, right? The 10 plagues, the 10 commandments, the actual giving of the law takes place in Exodus. Leviticus would be the legislation of it. And this is essentially the construct and the structure of Jewish civilization, is the book of Leviticus. If you wanted to get the download of the law, you would read the book of Leviticus. And there's rules for everything. There's rules for personal hygiene, there's rules for relationships, there's rules for neighbors, there's rules for eating, there's rules for killing, there's rules for sacrifice, there's rules for all. And it enumerates them very specifically. And it essentially is the foundation for what becomes Jewish culture. Numbers, we see in Numbers the trial that the Israelites go through. There's a lot of complaining in the book of Numbers. And there's a lot of God reacting to that complaining. And we'll talk about that a little. The generation that was led out of Egypt has died. There are only 3 people remaining, Moses, Joshua, and Caleb. Everybody else has died, and their kids are the ones that are about to enter the promised land. Because the children of Israel, because of their complaining and their kind of incessant behavior throughout the book of Numbers, God's like, you don't get to enter the land. Your children will, but you don't.
You said there's the only 3 remaining
3 remaining of the original generation that left Egypt.
The original.
And that's Moses, Joshua, who's his right-hand man, and Caleb, who's Joshua's right-hand man. And so Deuteronomy is Moses restating the law to that new generation. So we see in Deuteronomy a lot of restatement of the law. We see Moses actually recounts the journey. This is what your parents did. I was there and I witnessed the Exodus. I was there and I witnessed the complaining. I was there when they didn't want manna and they wanted quail. I was there. Don't do that. And that's basically Deuteronomy. So we see in that faithfulness of God, because several times throughout the books of Exodus and Numbers, God's like, I'm going to wipe them out. I'm done. We're done. We're going to start all over. And Moses is like, let's not, please. Okay. So, broad strokes. And I would encourage you that if you ever get that wild hair, to dive a little bit deeper. Genesis, all 5 of these books are really amazing works. They can be very dry. Leviticus and Numbers is dry. But Genesis, Exodus, and Deuteronomy are juicy. They've got a lot of action in them and a lot of human relationship and intrigue. And we see that especially in the Abrahamic line. So the story goes something like this. Genesis chapters 1 through 11 are about as Cliff Notey could ever be about what God was up to way back in the beginning. And we see that's the flood, that's chapter 6. The garden is chapter 3. The very first promise of spiritual redemption we see in Genesis 3, verse 15, which I'll read. We've talked about that a little bit whenever we were going through Matthew. It's the prophecy of Christ. So basically, Adam and Eve have sinned, and Adam, Eve, and the serpent are all standing before God, and God's doing the whodunit type of thing. And Adam blames Eve. Eve accepts responsibility, but it's the snake is ultimately the tempter that led her down that line to make a bad decision. So God is giving each of them curses. But to the woman, he says, or to the snake, I'm sorry, he says, this is Genesis 3, verse 14 and 15. And the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head. And of course, is fulfilled. Christ is not a seed of a man, like it's a virgin birth. And so it's a seed of a woman. And through the woman's line, the serpent is defeated. And that is poetic. So we see that. Beautiful poetry all through these books, but especially there, it's both a curse to the serpent and a promise to the woman that she will be redeemed through her seed. And that's exactly what happens. The rest of the book, Genesis chapters 12 through 50, recount the Abrahamic journey. So chapters 12 through like 24, 26 is about Abraham. The beginning of chapter 12 is the call to adventure. And this is the call that all of us hear at some point, in some way, in some form. And here we see why it's important to listen to it and to act on it. So Abraham, before he's Abraham, he's Abram. Abram is an old man by the time he gets the call. This is Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, get thee out of the country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show. So just get up and go. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curses thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. Beginning of verse 4. So Abram departed. He listened, and he acted. And it gets real rough for him for a while. It's not a vacation. Um, but we see at the beginning of chapter 15, Abram and God are recounting this a little bit. After these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless? And the steward of my house is this Eleazar of Damascus. And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. And he believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. Paul recounts that in Romans. Paul is talking about the difference between the Jew and the Gentile, and points out that before there was circumcision, before there was the law, before there was all these things that the Jews at the time swore up and down had to be followed, Abram simply believed God, and God counted it as righteousness. And that's Paul's point, is that it is the action, faith as an action, because it is a verb, that is what reconciles you with God. That's what brings that connection forward. And we see that in Genesis. The sort of back half of the book, so chapters, I think, 26 through 30 or so, talk about Isaac, because the descendants are Abraham, Isaac. Then Isaac has two sons, Jacob and Esau. They're twins. And that story goes that when they were born, Esau came out first, but Jacob had a hold of his heel, had a hold of his foot as they were being born. Jacob then lies and conspires with his mother to steal his birthright, and he does that. Steals his birthright, lies to his dad. There's a whole conspiracy with mom and the younger child, and takes the elder's birthright, gets all this inheritance. Jacob and Esau fight for a while, which is not pretty. But then they reconcile. Jacob has 12 sons. These 12 sons become the heads of the tribes of Israel. So like when I say the tribe of Manasseh or the tribe of Gad or the tribe of Reuben, these are all names of the patriarchs of those houses. Each of the tribes is named for one of the sons of Jacob. Jacob, and I can't remember exactly what chapter in Genesis, Jacob wrestles with an angel at some point, and he wrestles with that angel so intently that his hip becomes dislocated. And the angel, puts his leg back in its socket, and they wrestle like all night. And Jacob's whole point is that he won't let the angel go until he gets a blessing. Of course, he is blessed, but then his name is changed from Jacob to Israel, which means to struggle with God or to wrestle with God. The idea being that he actually fought it out with God, wrestled with God. And so his name becomes Israel. His 12 sons become the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 families of Israel. Those brothers conspire against the younger brother, Joseph. They don't like him and attempt to kill him and basically leave him in a hole. And he is sold into slavery into Egypt. So Joseph makes his way down to Egypt, and he's a man of God and is faithful in the sense that he relies on the providence of God to move him through his life in Egypt. And he just lets what happens, and he goes through some tough trials, but ultimately becomes the number one man, second to Pharaoh. He becomes Pharaoh's number one guy because Joseph is able to basically protect the land from famine. He sets up a system of governance where they can store food and store grain so that when famine comes, they have enough food. And the story goes that during the famine, everybody around Egypt was suffering except for the Egyptians. So you would come to Egypt to buy grain because they had it stored. Well, Jacob sends his 11 sons to go to Egypt, and that's when they meet Joseph. They don't recognize him because they think that he has died, but Joseph recognizes them. He plays this kind of gotcha with them, and there's this big reunion, and it's all great. And so the whole family ends up going down to Egypt, and that's how the Jews get into Egypt. Is there's a famine, the brothers come, they reconcile with Joseph, and they stay in Egypt. That's how Genesis ends. Is they're in Egypt, and Joseph dies. He's mummified. That's how the text describes it, and I'll read that. Because he was a man of honor to the Egyptians, so he would have been given a death of honor, which would include mummification. So this is the last 4 verses or so of Genesis. This is Genesis 50, verse 22 through 26. And Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's house, and Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the 3rd generation. The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were brought upon Joseph's knees. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I die, and God will surely visit you, and bring you out of this land unto the land which he sware to Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from hence. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. Now, about 400 or so years passed between that verse and the beginning of Exodus. So in that span of time, the Israelites, of course, reproduce, and there is a whole abundance of them in Egypt, such that the Egyptians realize that they have a little bit of a problem. So I'm going to read the first few verses.
You said 400 years?
About 400 years. Yeah. I have not had a chance to double check these dates, so just be aware, I can't confirm the legitimacy of them, but my Bible states that Joseph dies, and then about, it says 1805, Moses is born in 1526 BC. And that's about where we pick it up at the beginning of Exodus. So,
Can we say that again?
yes, so my Bible says that Joseph dies in Egypt in 1805 BC, and that Moses is born in 1526 BC. I have a feeling those dates are a little bit off, but I did not double check any of those. But to give you an idea of the timeline, there is hundreds of years that pass between the death of Joseph and the birth of Moses, and then another 80 years before Exodus, or book of Exodus. Basically lays out exactly what I was describing. The children of Israel become so great that there's this whole class of population, and the Egyptians go, I don't like that. That's not good for us. So, Exodus chapter 1, verses 6 and following. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join with our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. So they enslaved them, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. And here's the kicker. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. And basically, as we get into chapter 2, the midwives save Moses by putting him in a basket made of reeds, and they float him down the Nile. He is, of course, discovered by the ruling class and raised with the how would I describe it? Essentially, with the royal family. And that is, let's see, chapter 2, verse 5 of Exodus. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him, and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. And then it recounts how they raised him. Moses is grown. Moses eventually does murder an Egyptian, and he flees and leaves Egypt. And then some time passes, and then Exodus chapter 3 is his call to adventure. And that's when God meets him in the burning bush and basically tells him, you are going to go to my people because I have heard their cry and I have remembered them. So let's get down to business. And that's exactly what happens through chapters 1 through 6. The remaining 3 chapters talk about Moses going back to the children of Israel saying, here's the dealio, God has shown up and we are getting out. And chapters 7 through 18 describe that deliverance. Those are the 10 plagues. And then we see in Exodus chapter 13 the institution of Passover. That is instituted as a way to remember the deliverance from tyranny, right? So God's action is to take his people from a place of tyranny to a place of freedom. That's not an easy journey, but it is a worthwhile and meaningful journey. And that motif is repeated multiple times throughout the Bible and culminates, of course, in Christ and his sacrifice. And the liberty that we enjoy as Christians. From a place of tyranny, a place of the law, which became tyrannical, to a place of freedom. That motif is in Passover. So this is a big deal. This is central to Jewish life, is Passover. So that's Exodus chapter 13. God basically tells them, you do this and do it as remembrance, teach it to your children. This is important. So we see the institution of a tradition, institution of culture surrounding redemption. Chapters 19 through 24 describe the formalization of the covenant. God leads them out, and he brings them to Mount Sinai, where he touches down. And he basically tells them, you will be my people if you follow these rules. Exodus chapter 20 is the 10 Commandments. God writes, Moses goes up into the mountain, 40 days. We're going to see that number repeated over and over and over, 40. Goes up into the mountain. God himself writes on tables of stone, front and back, the 10 Commandments. While Moses is up in the mount, Aaron, in his wisdom, conspires with several leaders of the tribes, and they make the golden calf, which is a wild thing if you think about it, because the way that Mount Sinai is described, you have, I don't remember how many hundreds of thousands of people are at the base of the mountain, The mountain is described as smoking and quaking. It's shrouded and in a cloud, and Moses is up on the mountain talking with God, and the children of Israel get impatient. They want to worship something. And so Aaron gathers up all the gold. This is the same Aaron who was right next to Moses as his spokesman for the 10 plagues. Like, he is an eyewitness to the majesty of God. Yeah, like, he walked through the sea, and they get there, and they're like, you know what? An idol. An idol seems like it would really hit the spot right now. So they make a golden calf. While Moses is on the mountain, God's like, you need to go, because God tells them what's going on. Tells Moses what's happening. So Moses is like, all right. He goes down, and when he's with Joshua, and it's really cool because Moses and Joshua are on the mountain. And Joshua tells Moses it sounds like the sounds of war because it's so loud. The children of Israelites are naked and praising this golden calf. So loud that Joshua's like, that sounds like battle. And Moses is like, no, it's not battle. When Moses sees the sight, he gets so angry, he throws the 10 Commandments down and they break. More poetry, right? So he forces them to grind the golden calf down, drink it, and then he commands whoever is for God to step forward. The tribe of Levi steps forward, and he tells the tribe of Levi to kill the leaders who were in on it, and about 3,000 men are slaughtered. And then he goes, we're going to try this again. And he goes, back up the mountain. So
1,000 people were slaughtered.
Yeah, so it's a messy scene. Like, it's very messy, and the whole, basically cover to cover, it's a mess, and how to navigate the mess.
Do you think that the people, I mean, I always kind of picture that people did that because they did witness miracles and they just had so deeply associated it with their own previous idea of God that they're like, we have to worship, like, we just went through the sea, like,
Yeah,
and
gotta worship something.
the gold is their version of God, you know, and then maybe it's just weird to think about, like, evolutionarily, God was like, all the people that can't grasp this new way of thinking, like, can't move forward in humanity.
They're stuck.
Like, that's what he did. He killed everyone who couldn't, like, rock with that.
Exactly.
Like, understand that.
Exactly.
That's nuts. That God was like, evolution. No, you don't get to move on.
Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah. It's really quite incredible. And the reason that the Levites become the priestly class is because of that episode. So the Levites were not worshiping the golden calf. And that's when Moses was like, okay, then arm yourselves, take your swords, and go kill the leaders who this idea was. Aaron is left alive, which was probably worse for him than dying, because Aaron is, of course, witness to all of this. And now he's got to live with it. And
he created the.
That's right. He melted the gold. He made the idol. Oops. Big oops. So that's chapters 32 through 34 of Exodus. Yeah, at the beginning of chapter 32. Actually, here I'm going to read 32 or 31 verse 18. And he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tables of stone, written with the finger of God. Next verse. And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together upon Aaron and said unto him, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For as this Moses, the man that brought us out of the land of Egypt, we want not what has become of him. We don't know what happened to the dude. So, like, make some gods. The very next verse. And if that doesn't capture the friction between God and humanity, I don't know what does. Here is civilization, written with the finger of God. Next verse. We would love chaos, actually. We choose chaos. And so in chapter 34, They renew the covenant. Let's see.
The mindset that gold is God just is nuts to me.
Mm-hmm.
That everyone's like, here's are the earrings, make us gods. These are your gods.
Yeah, and there is actually, I'm going to read the first few verses of chapter 33 of Exodus. Because the end of chapter 32 is the Lord plagued the people because they made the calf. So God plagues them. Chapter 33. And the Lord said unto Moses, depart and go up hence, thou and the people which thou hast brought up out of the land of thy seed will I give it. I will send an angel before thee, and I will drive out the Canaanite, the Amorite, the Hittite, Perizzite, Hivite, and Jebusite unto the land flowing with milk and honey. For I will not go up in the midst of thee, for thou art a stiff-necked people, lest I consume thee in the way. That's an amazing thing for God to say. I'm so upset that I'm not going to go with you, lest I destroy you. So I'm going to send an angel to do it instead. And when the people heard these evil tidings, they mourned. And no man did put on his ornaments. For the Lord had said unto Moses, say unto the children of Israel, you are a stiff-necked people. I will come up in the midst of thee in a moment and consume thee. Therefore now put off thine ornaments from thee, that I may know what to do unto thee. And the children of Israel stripped themselves of their ornaments by the Mount Horeb. Yeah. So God was upset. And you would be. I mean, my goodness. Everything that he just did with them, and they're like, we choose chaos. We want gods. He's like, okay, then you're going to be so afraid of me that if you misstep, I'm just going to kill you all. It's shocking. It's shocking. Okay, let's see here. Chapter 34 is pretty cool. God renews the covenant. That's when Moses asks to see God, and God basically says, I'll put you, come up into the mountain by yourself. I will put you in the cleft of a rock, and when I walk by you, I will cover your eyes with my hand. And as I pass by, I will remove my hand, and you will see my back. And so Moses sees the physical form or whatever it is of God in that way. But God tells him, you cannot look at my face. If you see my face, you will die. No man can see my face. That's Exodus chapter 34. And then the rest of the book, Exodus 35 through 40, describes the construction of the tabernacle. Very specific about how the tabernacle is supposed to be constructed. And think of the tabernacle as like a giant glorified tent. There was a central structure. There was the altar outside of the central structure and a court that kind of enveloped them. And there were rules for who could come into the court, rules for, of course, when to sacrifice and that sort of thing. But what's really cool is that at the end of the book of Exodus, so we begin the book with slavery. And the end of the book, this is chapter 40, verses 34 through 38. Then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation because the cloud abode thereon, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And when the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward on their journeys. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they journeyed not till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was upon the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. So God leads the children of Israel through the wilderness with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And the fire would light their way, of course. So the end of the book of Exodus, despite all the friction and everything that occurred between God and the children of Israel, God forgives them. There's consequences, of course, to their actions, but he himself rests upon the tabernacle. So you're a children of Israel, or you're a child of Israel, you're camping, and you're wandering through the wilderness, and there's this huge tent structure with a cord and altar and everything, and the glory of the Lord rests on that central structure. And when the cloud lifts up, everybody picks their stuff up and they follow the cloud. And the same thing at night, it would just be fire. So pretty cool. God himself is leading the children of Israel. After he said, I'm not going to go up in the midst of you anymore because I'm so angry that if I do, I'll just slaughter you. Moses talks it out with him. And God's like, okay, I'm not going to kill him. I want to, but I'm not going to do it. And I will lead them. And so Moses is able to reconcile with God. And that's what makes, in my opinion, that's what makes Moses such a powerful figure. Because he talks to God just like we're talking. So the book of Exodus concludes with them journeying through the wilderness. The book of Leviticus is all of the rules for hygiene, for sickness, for sacrifice. When I say a dry book, I mean it's pretty dry in that even discernment of leprosy, it's very specific. The priest is to, examine if you have a bright spot on your skin. The priest examines it. If there's a white hair in the bright spot and it's concave, it's leprosy. If there's no white hair but it's still bright, you have to quarantine for 7 days and then be reevaluated. Rules like that are enumerated throughout the whole book. So when you think law, that's it. That's the law. If you deviated from that, you were punished, by stoning or by death or whatever it was. So it's very strict. And the idea is that when we look back at it through modern eyes, we're understanding that God is teaching them how to navigate sickness and disease, how to provide for themselves. He's basically gifting them civilization. This is how you conduct yourself. You must adhere to these laws, because if you step outside of these laws, the whole civilization is in danger. That person must be dealt with severely. It's the same idea behind if you have invaders and you cut their heads off and put their heads on a pike. It's like, be ye warned. We are not going to tolerate this behavior. That's the whole thing of the law. We're not going to tolerate people stepping out of line. And so all of these rules and all of these sacrifices are so daily, so intense, that your life is this. It is this. So we don't appreciate it in the same way that they probably would have appreciated Christ 2,000 years ago, because Christ was like, you can throw all that out the door. Like, the law is good because of what it bequeathed to us. The law is good, but nobody can follow it. It's too strict. It's way too strict. So I, as the living embodiment of the law, will show you how to do it, show you the spirit of the law, and if you just adhere to the spirit of the law, to my spirit, you'll be fine. That's Jesus Christ, right? And so the Jews back then, and that so much of the New Testament is Paul talking about how to navigate this newfound freedom, because even comparable polytheistic religions, life revolved around ceremony and ritual and sacrifice. And Jesus shows up and is like, you can forget all of that. We're going to change it. It's radical and revolutionary because it's so stringent. In Leviticus chapter 10, a couple of priests don't offer fire properly. They don't create the fire properly. They're killed on the spot. So you have to curate fire in a specific way for sacrifice and for lighting the incense in the temple. And if you didn't, you were put to death. That's a shocking amount of responsibility. Chapters 9 through 15 describe purity. There's sexual purity. There's food purity. That's where you can't eat. Jews don't eat shellfish and pork. All that is covered in these chapters. And then the balance of the book, so basically 16 through 27, we see the Day of Atonement. There are other moral and ethical rules, like how do you deal with conflict between your neighbor? That's covered in these chapters. How do you deal with conflict as a society? That's covered in these chapters. And then it ends with chapter 27, which talks about the importance of vows. So if you vowed a vow, you could buy your way out of that vow for a certain price. So Leviticus chapter 27, I'll just give you a couple of examples. Okay. This is Leviticus chapter 27. And this is all, the whole book is God dictating these rules to Moses. Moses then dictates the rules to the children of Israel. So, the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, this is Leviticus 27, verse 1. The Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When a man shall make a singular vow, the person shall be for the Lord by thy estimation. So when you make a vow, here's the price of the vow. Thy estimation shall be of the male, from 20 years old even unto 60 years old, shall be 50 shekels of silver, after the shekel of the sanctuary. So if I made a vow, I'm between 20 and 60. If I made a vow saying, I promise I'm going to roof your house. Turns out I can't roof your house. Well, I'm bound by law to roof your house. I can buy my way out of it by donating 50 shekels of silver to the temple. That's how it works, right? These are ways in which the government, because God essentially establishes, when I think Leviticus, I think legislation. He is essentially establishing a government that's overseen by the Levites. The Levites are the arbiters of the law. They handle the sacrifices, they handle the tabernacle. Each tribe of the Levites, each family has certain responsibilities for the tabernacle. Somebody's responsible for the tent. Somebody's responsible for the menorah. Somebody's responsible for the Ark of the Covenant and the court and the altar. And so the government oversees and arbitrates all of these different laws that God has given. And basically Leviticus chapter 27 talks about how to fund it. You know, you can make vows, but vows are so serious that you can't just be like, hey, I'm gonna roof your house, and then just never follow up on it. Like, I am bound by law to do that, and if I want out of it, well, then I have to pay the price, pay the tax to the government, for the government to say he's no longer bound by that law, we're not going to legally enforce it. I mean, that's what this is. And the end of the book ends with the importance of tithing, tithing of the land, because that is also how the government is funded. That's how the temple is funded. So this is Leviticus 27, 30, verse 30 and following. And all the tithe of the land, whether the seed of the land or fruit of the tree, is the Lord, that is holy unto the Lord. And if a man will at all redeem aught of his tithes, he shall add thereunto a fifth part thereof. If you're going to add to tithing, 20%. And concerning the tithe of the herd or of the flock, even of whatsoever passeth under the rod, the tenth shall be holy unto the Lord. He shall not search whether it be good or bad, neither shall he change it. And if he change it at all, then both it and the change thereof, it shall be holy, it shall not be redeemed. These are the commandments which the Lord commanded Moses for the children of Israel in Mount Sinai. This is how you fund it. This is how you take care of it. This is how you do it. So every time I read through these, I'm like, it's civilization. He's giving them civilization. So Numbers, the book of Numbers, is appropriately named because it's about the census. The first chapters basically enumerate the heads of the tribes of Israel, they take a census. Then Numbers chapter 1 breaks down the tribe of Reuben, the tribe of Simeon, Gad, Judah, Issachar, Zebulon, Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin, Dan, Asher, Naphtali. Like all of them are broken down, their families, their head count, and there are a lot of them. A lot of them. And then it's the organization of the tribes. Good morning. Oh, good morning.
Morning.
It is, I should have thrown up a graphic, but Moses actually arranges the tribes. Certain tribes are on the north side of the camp, certain tribes on the east, west, and south side of the camp. He organizes, he literally not only gives them legislation for how to conduct themselves, but then organizes them in a physical way around the tabernacle. So that God is literally central to all of the tribes. That's not a coincidence. And so the book of Numbers basically sets that scene. Here are all the people. God is central to them. And then the bulk of the book, chapters 11 through 25, recount a lot of their difficulty in the wilderness. That's where we see the complaining. So Numbers chapter 11, I'll give you an example. So they're wandering through the wilderness. They've been given all these rules of civilization. God is literally in the middle of their camp. His glory is on the tabernacle. He is actually leading them through the wilderness. There is a method to all of this madness. And honestly, if you were to conduct 1 million people through the wilderness, you're going to have rules. Just going to have rules. So, God is feeding them manna. Basically every night, the frost, the dew that would settle were these little, they look like coriander seeds, and they tasted of fresh oil. So probably tasted like fresh olive oil. And the children of Israel would gather up these little pearls, and they would mash them into flour, mix them with oil, and bake little cakes. The manna would only last for a day. So every night they had just enough provision from God to make cakes for that day, except for the Sabbath, in which they would have enough to make cakes for 2 days. Because you couldn't gather on the Sabbath. It wasn't allowed. So God would provide, on the 6th day, would provide enough so that they wouldn't have to gather and they have cakes on the Sabbath. So anyway, they're eating this bread. That's their food. That's breakfast, lunch, and dinner is this bread. And they get tired of it. And they start to complain. And they start to say, well, back in Egypt, we had leeks and onions and garlic and fish, and we had all this variety, and now we're just eating this miraculous manna that just tastes like oil, and we're sick of it. Basically. Paraphrasing, of course. So, chapter 11 of Numbers begins with, and when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them and consumed them that were in the outermost parts of the camp. Again, back to God's point in Leviticus and in Exodus, is if I go with you, I'm so angry that I'm just going to start killing people. And here we go. And that's what's happening. And the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched. And he called the name of the place Tamarah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them. And they continue, verse 4, and the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting, and the children of Israel wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the fish which we would eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons, the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all besides this manna. Okay? So then Moses gets tired of hearing it. Because they're complaining to Moses. Moses is trying to keep God from killing them. He's in a sticky spot. I don't envy Moses at this point in time. So verse 10. Then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased. And Moses said unto the Lord, Wherefore hast thou afflicted thy servant, and wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight? And thou layest the burden of all these people upon me. Have I conceived all these people? Have I begotten them, that thou shouldest say unto me, carry them in thy bosom, as a nursing father beareth the suckling child, into the land which thou swarest unto their fathers? When should I have flesh to give unto these people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. I am not able to bear all these people alone, because it is too heavy for me. And if thou deal thus with me, kill me, I pray thee, out of hand. If I have found favor in thy sight, let me not see my wretchedness. Moses is
He's
so
like, save me from these people,
Right.
please.
right. Why have you done this to me, God? Just kill me. Like, if I am blessed in your eyes, just take me out. Like, I'm done. And so, God does eventually send them quail, and there's so many quail that it starts to rot. Yeah, that's the end of chapter 11, verse 31. And there went forth a wind from the Lord, and brought quails from the sea, and let them fall by the camp, as it were a day's journey on this side, and as it were a day's journey on the other side, round about the camp. And it were 2 cubits high upon the face of the earth. 2 cubits high. So cubits about 18 inches. So that's 36 inches. That's 3 feet. That's quail 3 feet deep.
If you ask for it.
Yeah, you want flesh? I'll give you flesh. And he put it not in the camp. It's a day's journey on this side and that side of the camp. So he's like, you want meat? Go work for it. Here's 3 feet deep of quail. Go fetch it. And so God sends it. And the people stood up that day and all that night and all the next day, and they gathered the quails. He that gathered least gathered 10 omers, and they spread them all about them abroad for themselves round about the camp. An omer is like a base. It's a measure of volume. That's a lot of quail. That's a ton of quail. And while the flesh was yet between their teeth, ere it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people. And the Lord smote the people with a very great plague. And he called the name of that place Kibroth Havatava. There they buried the people that lusted. And the people journeyed from Kibroth Havatava unto Hazeroth and abode at Hazeroth. Yeah, so not great. And then, of course, we see the next few chapters, they spy out the promised land because they are approaching the promised land. They send forth spies. The takeaway there is that Joshua and Caleb are the only 2 spies who are like, we can take the land. We have God on our side. Everybody else is like, their people are too big and strong for us. We can't do it. So what do? They return to worshiping other gods. Yeah, I know. There's a lot in here that we can learn from, for sure. And essentially, because of all this stiff-neckedness, the end of the book of Numbers ends with Moses saying that whole generation that had left Egypt, that was in the wilderness, it's 40 years. There's that number again. Moses on the mount for 40 days twice, and they're in the wilderness for 40 years. Like that number 40 we see all the time. The motif, of course, of Christ is that he's tempted in the wilderness for 40 days, So only a couple of people remain of that generation. Everybody else is new. So that is Numbers chapter 26. Verse 63. These are they that were numbered by Moses and Eleazar the priest, who numbered the children of Israel in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho. But among these there was not a man of them whom Moses and Aaron the priests numbered when they numbered the children of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. For the Lord had said of them, they shall surely die in the wilderness. And there was not a man left of them save Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. So the beginning of the book of Numbers begins with the census. By the end of the book of Numbers, by the second census, nobody from the first census is still alive. So Numbers recounts the journey through the wilderness and how that generation basically rebels repeatedly against God, such that God's like, you're just going to die out here. Like, that's how it's going to work for you. Your children will get the land, but not you. And the end of the book of Numbers is the preparation of that generation to come into the promised land. Joshua is chosen by God in chapter 27 as the next leader, because Joshua was Moses' right-hand man. If you'll recall, Joshua was with Moses in the mount when he got the Ten Commandments. So Joshua has been there by Moses the whole time. They talk about the balance of the book is basically them saying, okay, here's the new generation. Here's how we're going to divide the land up. When we get into the land, Joshua's going to be your leader. Moses will pass. They're prepping and priming themselves for entering the promised land. That's how the book of Numbers ends. And the book of Deuteronomy begins with Moses restating the law to that new generation. So he talks in the first few chapters of Deuteronomy, is just Moses saying, here's what happened. We came out of Egypt. God delivered us. We wandered through the wilderness. We got the Ten Commandments. We made a golden calf. Oopsie. We did that a couple more times. And you don't do that. Don't do what your mom and dad did. Okay? So Deuteronomy is so named, it's Greek, which basically means the second law. So it's Moses teaching the law to the new generation, saying, listen to Joshua, and you'll be fine. Moses then tells Joshua, you're going to have problems. Like, be ready for it. And that's basically the bulk of the book, is like a dictation or speeches, songs by Moses, all ways for them to basically embody a tradition of the law. He's teaching them, and that's essentially his last act, because Moses also sinned, and God told him, you're going to get to see the land, but you're not going to be allowed into the land, because back when he was going to speak to the rock to produce water for the Israelites, Moses just took his staff and struck the rock. And God goes, you don't get to go in the land either. Nobody gets to go in the land. Like, this generation is just not going to get it. And so we see Moses recounting all of that. In Deuteronomy chapter 18, we're told that there will be prophets that come up. And when we think about prophets, which we'll talk about next week, the law is the structure, right? Think big picture. When you think law and prophets, law is the structure, it's the rules, it's what is filled with your action as a people. You're what you abide by. Prophets are the spirit of that law that come and remind you why you're even bothered doing it, right? And we see repeatedly prophets show up at times of great conflict when they have lost their way. And often it's a prophet talking to a king saying, hey, wake up. Like, you're leading these people. You need to return to what it meant to be a people of God. Prophets repeatedly do that, which is why the law is the first 5 books, and then we see numerous books of prophets, spokesmen of God that come and say, we need to get back to basics. We need to return to what it meant to be a people of God. It's more than just a book of rules, And so we see prophets are prophesied in Deuteronomy chapter 18. I was telling you that Moses tells Joshua he's going to have problems. That's Deuteronomy chapter 28. I will read that. He's kind of plain.
Which chapter is what?
Chapter 28. And Jason, I know we're over time, but I'm just going to keep rolling until some folks come in. So Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 47 through 57. Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon your neck, until he have destroyed you. The Lord shall bring a nation against you from far, from the end of the earth. As swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land, until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or increase of thy kine, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. And the rest of those verses talk about more pending destruction, to the extent that it's actually, talked about that they're going to eat each other. They will result to cannibalism. The Jews result to cannibalism multiple times throughout their history because of enemy sieges. We see the siege of Samaria was brutal. The siege by Babylon was brutal. The siege that the Romans did in 70 was so brutal that the behavior of the Jews sent the Roman army into a frenzy, because they were overcome by the sheer inhumanity that they encountered when they breached the walls. And actually, General Titus loses control of the Roman army, which we'll get to that. But anyway, in Deuteronomy chapter 31, this is where God basically tells Moses and Joshua, like, there's going to be problems. Let's see. This is Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 14. And the Lord said unto Moses, Behold, thy days approach that thou must die. Call Joshua and present yourselves in the tabernacle of the congregation, that I may give him a charge. And Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tabernacle of the congregation. And the Lord appeared in the tabernacle in a pillar of a cloud, and the pillar of the cloud stood over the door of the tabernacle. And the Lord said unto Moses, Behold, thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, and this people will rise up and go a whoring after gods of the strangers of the land, whither they go to be among them, and will forsake me, and break my covenant which I have made with them. Then my anger shall be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them, and I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured. And many evils and troubles shall befall them, so that they will say in that day, Are not these evils come upon us, because our God is not among us? And I will surely hide my face in that day, for all the evils which they shall have wrought, and that they are turned unto other gods. Now therefore write ye this song, and teach it to the children of Israel. Put it in their mouths, that this song may be a witness for me against the children of Israel. For when I shall have brought them into the land which I swear unto their fathers, that floweth with milk and honey, they shall have eaten and filled themselves, and waxen fat. They will then turn unto other gods, and serve them, and provoke me, and break my covenant. And it shall come to pass, when many evils and troubles are befallen them, that this song shall testify against them as a witness. For it shall not be forgotten out of the mouths of their seed, for I know their imagination which they go about, even now, before I have brought them into the land which I swear. Moses therefore wrote this song the same day, and taught it to the children of Israel. And he gave Joshua the son of Nun a charge, and said, Be strong and of good courage, for thou shalt bring the children of Israel into the land which I swear unto them, and I will be with thee. So that the scene is incredible. The children of Israel gathered. God shows up. He's talking to Joshua and Moses. Tells Moses, write the song down, because we're going to do this song and dance over and over and over again. And then tells Joshua, be strong, be of good courage, I'm with you. Which would be an incredible charge to be told by God, like, it's going to get rough, we're going to teach them the song, they're not going to forget it, and then they'll remember me, and they'll come back. And to look at Joshua and say, all right, you're up, big boy. And that's how the book of Joshua opens. So Deuteronomy closes in a couple of chapters. Moses dies. Chapter 32, by the way, is the Song of Moses. It's a beautiful song. We're not going to read it, but I would encourage you to read it because basically the song is talking about how they can rely on God. He is jealous because he loves you and he wants to be your rock and your salvation. And when you forget it, sing this song so that you'll remember and come back. And that's Deuteronomy chapter 32. Chapter 33, Moses blesses the children of Israel. And then chapter 34 is when Moses dies. Verse 1. And Moses went up from the plains of Moab unto the mountain of Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, that is over against Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead, unto Dan. Verse 5. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, I'm going to read verse 4. And the Lord said unto him, This is the land which I swear unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, saying, I will give it unto thy seed. I have caused thee to see it with thine eyes, but thou shalt not go over thither. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab over against Beth Peor, but no man knoweth of his sepulchre unto this day. And Moses was 120. There's a triple multiple of 40 when he died. His eye was not dim, nor his natural force abated. And the children of Israel wept for Moses in the plain of Moab 30 days. So the days of weeping and mourning for Moses were ended. And then verse 10 through following, and there arose not a prophet since in Israel like unto Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. And it describes throughout Exodus when God would essentially appear in a pillar of cloud, and Moses would talk to him as plainly as we are talking now. And people would witness this. And so the book of Joshua is Joshua suiting up. And it is repeated multiple times in chapter 1, be strong and of good courage, for I'm with you. And then they cross the Jordan and they invade the promised land and conquer it. So that is a big, chunky, broad strokes of the first 5 books of the Bible. Any questions about what we went over, or any insights about what we went over? So, pretty intense. And it's pretty cool because the book of Deuteronomy begins and ends. The whole book is a preparation of that generation to be children of God. A fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham. Despite the fact, and one of the big takeaways, of course, is God's faithfulness. Despite his anger, his very justified anger, he still follows through on his promise. Okie dokie. We'll talk about prophets next week.
Kind of picking up that even the wandering through the wilderness didn't stop people's stubbornness.
Never does.
It didn't.
Okay.